All right, welcome to Survival Mode, another amazing interview and podcast here. I am blessed to have an amazing person, and we share some kind of similar joys with activity and things like that. But her story is just super amazing and powerful. When I heard it, I was in awe, like, oh my God. And her being able to tell her story today is even the greatest. So welcome, Niki Kozak.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So Niki, welcome. So tell me just a little bit about yourself, kind of like growing up, kind of a little bit about your life, for sure.
I've always been a tomboy, never much of a girly girl. Don't let the hair fool you. It was always very short. um, I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, moved to Colorado when I was about 4 or 5, right after kindergarten, and grew up at high altitude near the sunshine. So kind of should have expected the melanoma to come along because as a teenager in the 80s, baking yourself with baby oil was the thing to do. So I ended up moving to California. My husband went to the Air Force Academy. I met him right after he graduated. We moved out here to California and have been here ever since. We very short period of time spent in Memphis, Tennessee, but we came back here because we did not know a place like this existed. I live on the central coast of California now. And when we came here to Vandenberg Air Force Base, we were just like, wow, it's perpetual springtime here. How could you not love this place?
That's awesome. And I could relate to growing up in the 80s with the baking and the oil. The other thing we did, and I don't know if you guys did this, was we used to put Sun-In in our hair. Do you remember Sun-In?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that became a thing again when my son was a kid. And he did the same thing. He and all his friends, they all wanted to go that bleach blonde look. And yeah.
That was funny. So you wound up in California. You're in California, right? Which
Yes.
is beautiful. So tell me more.
It's part of the reason we love being here, again, the weather, and it's really conducive to outdoor activities and sports, which is, again, more sunshine. But I've always been a tomboy. I've always liked sports, running, cycling. I was playing soccer. I actually played roller hockey for about 6 years too. That was not outside, but that was in the evening anyway. So I still managed to get all my outdoor activities in before going inside to play hockey. But yeah, it just, I don't know, sports and athletics, I think, kind of prepared me for the whole cancer wallop. Just, you would think you'd get to know your body. And I kind of thought that I did. But when I first started having symptoms of anything being wrong, I thought I had allergies. I was like, I'm getting, some minor headaches, and I'm having a little trouble breathing while I'm out on my bike rides. And when I'm pushing it hard, I'm just not, I don't know, things aren't going too well. But the last thing you're going to think is I've got a huge tumor in my lungs and there's also a bunch in my brain. I never really, it's kind of strange. I haven't really fit into a niche as far as what a typical cancer patient is, only because when I first was diagnosed with melanoma, it was a superficial spreading one on my shoulder. I had it cut off. I was like, whatever. It was skin cancer. I still didn't consider myself a survivor at that point. It was just,
yeah, it's just a
whatever.
thing on your skin.
Yeah,
right? I would have probably felt the same thing.
Yeah, they said you're cured, you're fine, 2 to 4% chance it's ever going to come back. So I went on living my normal life, riding my bike. I had, heck of a farmer's tan, as you can imagine, with the shorts and the short sleeves. Same thing with running. You brown up. And it was about a little over 5 years later, about 5 years, 9 months after having the one cut off my shoulder. And I was at work. I was a radio DJ. Yay.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
We were live on air doing a morning show, and we were doing what we called the in-Googleable question of the day. And what it was is we would take a basic trivia question, and we would kind of change the wording of it so that you couldn't search it out on Google. Otherwise, listeners are smart people. They wanted to win those concert tickets or whatever. We had Disney tickets. So we were doing the question of the day, and I was reading the question, and my morning show co-host was recording it. And I thought, I'm having some issues reading these questions. I don't know what's with me today. You know, sometimes you have brain hiccups, you just little issues here and there. And my morning show partner was like, would you pull your head out? What are you doing? I mean, what's wrong with you? And I don't even know when it happened. At some point I went catatonic. I mean, the last thing I remembered was getting up and going to use the restroom. So between songs, you've got the commercial spot block. You've got a few minutes to do your thing. So I ran down the hall, went to the restroom, came back. I sat down, and the commercials were still playing. So I remember looking for CHP, for traffic update information. So when we came back on air, I would have the local traffic, and if there were any accidents, what to watch out for. It was the morning commute. So that was the last thing I remember. And then I woke up on the floor, being strapped to a backboard. They were trying to put a neck brace on me, and I kept just trying to pull it off. And they kept saying, ma'am, you can't do that. You need to put this on. We don't know. And for the next about 3 or 4 days, I was in and out. I was conscious, but it was almost like a dream state kind of thing. Like I wasn't aware of the gravity of the situation. So
let me ask you a question. So you had the skin cancer. Roughly how old were you?
I was 38.
And so then you had some kind of allergy symptoms that you thought, right?
Yeah.
How old were you when that started to happen, that leads up to this?
That was right before I turned 44. And that lasted probably, I don't know, maybe about 4 or 5 months. Okay. And my husband kept saying, because I used to do these big, long rides. On my days off, I would go for an 80-mile bike ride, and I called it my peanut butter ride. I would take a peanut butter sandwich, a peanut butter Cliff Bar, a peanut butter goo, and I would go out on these peanut butter rides. And he said, maybe you're allergic to peanut butter, and maybe this is why you're having so much trouble breathing. And I'm thinking, I'm still riding my bike 80 miles in one day, just going out. This is what I do in my spare time. So when we found out I had brain tumors, I had 3 that showed up in the emergency room the day I fell out of my chair. It just was one of those things where you just went, wow, what? Who can ride their bike with a brain tumor? I mean,
you were somewhat completely normal, other than some shortness of breath, right? Or like some.
And that was only when I was exercising. That was when I was trying to go uphill. Otherwise, it wasn't something I really noticed, because as an athlete, you work your lungs, and they've got a larger capacity than normal. So normal life doesn't really, it's a flight of stairs, whatever. It's not. And
so you're a DJ, you're tripping over words, and you kind of fall, right? Yeah, I guess I went catatonic. My co-host, this is what I'm getting the story secondhand from people. My co-host called my husband and said, has Niki ever been so angry with you, she just stops talking to you? Now, mind you, I had been working on air with this guy for 4 hours, 5 days a week in the morning for 10 years. And he said, is this a joke? This is not a funny joke. I don't know what your idea of a joke is. Knock it off. I'm at work. Right. And he goes, oh, wait, never mind. She's having a seizure. I got to call 911. And I thought, seriously? I heard the recording, probably about 1.5 years later. I heard a recording of what was going on, to the point where our boss's daughter
was listening to the show that morning and called the boss and said, how close are you to getting to the radio station? It sounds like Nikki's having a seizure, having a stroke. I don't know what's wrong with her, but she can't even speak today. And I mean, I heard it and I thought, wow, I mean, people should get to know the stroke symptoms, because if somebody is speaking in gobbledygook, it doesn't matter if they're 44, you should probably call an ambulance. It's just, don't wait till they fall on the floor.
You know what's funny? Like, that's what led me to go to the emergency room. And it was vague because I thought it would have been a stroke. Because I've had friends that like are bikers, are healthy, thin, and they've had strokes. And that's immediately kind of what you think, right?
Yeah. I mean, you just,
Who goes
it's
to a
almost like
brain
this
tumor?
is somebody who's super athletic,
Yep.
44 years old, the most fit person, because if you've ever seen radio people, it is not a fit business. It's not like TV.
That's why they're on the radio,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So, you know, everybody was saying, she's the most fit person here at the station. She eats healthy. She rides her bike all the time. And I thought, well, then why didn't you think stroke? I mean, that's aneurysm, and anything, something in the head was not right. It was just, to be so out of character for, you know, from what I had been for 10 years, I just thought, wow, I can't even. But I don't remember being told that I had brain tumors at the emergency room. My husband and son were there, and
Okay.
they said, after I was told you have tumors in your brain, I guess I had another seizure, which is probably why I don't remember being told, because I was already kind of.
Yep.
But I did. I mean, I woke up enough that I do remember the entire ambulance trip to the hospital.
Okay.
I just don't remember what happened after they took me out of the ambulance. Then I went back out again, and I guess I got a CT, and then they needed to do an MRI, and I just like patches of it here and there, because it was the symptomatic tumor was in the left frontal lobe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only it's weird to talk about brain tumor size and only.
Right.
It was only about 2.5 centimeters in size. So like those large marbles.
Mm-hmm.
But the edema was all through and that's what started to affect the speech center and all of that. So really, the tumor removal itself was not difficult as far as a neurosurgeon. I mean, guys that work and ladies that work removing brain tumors, for them it was like, oh, this is so easy. This is not going to be a problem. We're just going to remove this tumor, and then you're going to go get gamma knife radiation for the other ones in your head, and we're just going to put you on the path back to life. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Sure, why not? And my husband said,
you go to the ER, don't remember a whole lot, but from that stay, you went right to surgery, or did you get discharged and do all
I got discharged and sent home that afternoon. Let's see, I fell out of my chair at about 8:15 in the morning. Mm-hmm. By 4:00 in the afternoon, I was home and on my couch.
Okay. And they said, oh, follow up with a neurosurgeon.
Yeah, they said, you're going to follow up with the neurosurgeon in 2 weeks, and we'll worry about it then. Right now, you're on steroids and anti-seizure meds, and don't drive for 6 months. And I said, okay. Apparently, when you have a grand mal seizure, you're not allowed to drive for a while. It was my husband that said, no, we're in a lovely small town. Love this area. I'm dying here. I'm not leaving. But you do not want to get brain surgery in this small town. No offense to the neurosurgeon, but we were not doing it here. Right. So my husband ended up taking me down to USC, which it's a 180-mile trip to get down there into LA. But I had a really, really good neurosurgeon, and the whole team that I have down there, everyone is down there. My dermatologist is down there. My medical oncologist is down there. My neurosurgeon's down there. Radiation oncology is down there. Just the whole care team is down there. So I ended up going down for a pre-op within about 4 days, I think it was. It didn't take them very long to get me in and see me. And it was 3 days after pre-op that they said, yeah, we're going to do this surgery and we're going to do it 2 days from now, 4 days from now, whatever it was. By 11 days after hitting the floor, I had already completed neurosurgery. So before even, in fact, I think I was being released from the hospital. I was only kept for a day and a half in the hospital. But we were on our way home from LA when the neurosurgeon up here, the office called and said, we're just confirming your appointment for, and my husband said, you can just cancel that appointment. She's already had neurosurgery. She's done with you. My head, I had a big scar from here all the way down around, and it looked like Halloween. I mean, it was not pretty.
So let me ask you, so you get diagnosed in the ER. Now you mentioned that you went from skin to lung to brain. Did they detect lung at the ER visit, or where was that all figured out? Like, did you have to have lung surgery as well?
Yeah, eventually I did.
Okay.
I ended up, I don't think they checked at the hospital. They just, at the ER, they stopped with
The
you have
head.
brain tumors. You have at least 3 was what the report said.
Wow.
And then it was down at USC after I had the neurosurgery down there. They sent it off to pathology. The neurosurgeon himself said, I've dealt with enough melanoma that with your history of melanoma and with what it looked like when I took it out of your brain, I'm pretty certain that that's what pathology is going to come back with, is that it's melanoma.
Wow. So it originated from skin cancer.
So yeah, it did. It started on my shoulder and then traveled its way on through.
Wow.
So
That's kind of scary a little bit, you know what I mean?
It was a lot scary.
Like, because you just don't think about, like, we're all like, listen, we grew up in the 80s, we're out in the sun, we're like,
Yeah.
hey, they're just gonna zap a little patch off my head. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. When they said, oh, well, we got it all, it's 2 to 4% chance it's coming back. I mean, when I went through the whole brain surgery thing, all I could think is, what happened to my 2 to 4%? Like, where did that go? I mean, so really, am I that unlucky that I'm in the 2 to 4% of people that go from a stage 1 skin cancer to stage 4 with central nervous system metastasis? I mean, that's just like, it's not heard of. I mean, at least not in the medical circles. Now, speaking with other melanoma patients, I think it's a little more common than we think, and it just doesn't get reported a lot. But it was USC who told me, you know what, when you get home, you're probably going to want to go get a chest x-ray, because melanoma likes to go to the lungs first. It doesn't always work that way, but that's where it tends to first show up.
Wow.
So, I mean, I never, at that point, I considered myself, now I'm a cancer patient. When it was just on the skin and they were like, we removed it, no big deal, you're done. I didn't think about it. It was at that point I thought, okay, I'm a cancer patient. It wasn't until American Brain Tumor Association contacted me that I thought of myself as a brain tumor patient. I knew I had brain tumors, but I always thought of brain tumor patients as brain cancer patients. And it was cancer in my brain, but it wasn't brain cancer. But when I looked at the statistics, I wish I had it in front of me now. I think it's close to 20,000 people in the US. It might be slightly under that who have brain cancer versus 3 times as many who have metastases to the brain from either breast cancer, lung cancer, or melanoma.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because when I was diagnosed, because I didn't think I would have had a brain tumor. I thought I was working too hard or something.
Yeah, you think it's stress.
Stress or whatever. I went to a small hospital here. And as soon as they found, and you had a large marble, I had a small marble, it was about, I think it was about 9 millimeters, something like that, and they scanned me every which way during that visit because they said usually the tumor in your brain comes from another spot. That's what they said to me, which I was a little surprised. And I had all of a sudden I get brain tumor. I'm sitting in the hospital. They kept me overnight. And of course I was discharged the next day. I didn't get the surgery then. I went to a larger facility, but they had a cancer doc, amazing guy. He probably did the best assessment I saw a doctor ever do. They drew all these weird labs, like to make sure it wasn't some infection or some weird thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But he assessed everything and they scanned me 6 ways to Sunday. I was like shocked.
We're in a better hospital than we have.
I was like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Oh, by the way, you got a few little nodules on your thyroid, but that's, people have that. So, but of course you're following up on it. But, so anyway, so you have brain tumors that are melanoma cancer cells in your brain.
Yep.
So they take one out, they gamma knife, 2 others?
There ended up being, by the time I went in for gamma knife, there were 5. So they had taken the one out up here. And then there were some that were in the back of my head and one that was over here. I mean, they were not anywhere near the original. So it wasn't like they could put this one hole in your head and just scrape everything out. So
Right.
Yeah, they ended up doing gamma knife to the other 4 that were in there, and plus the resection cavity, just to make sure there was nothing that went missed.
Gotcha. And so how did that go? That was successful, or?
It was successful. It was took care of everything for the time being.
Okay. And roughly, if you don't mind, how old were you when all this occurred?
Still 44.
44.
And I did not think I was going to see 45. It was one of those things where now you're going home and you're thinking, I've got a bunch of brain tumors in my head. I still hadn't seen medical oncology at that point. I knew I had melanoma, but I had only seen my neurosurgeon and then the radiation oncologist, who I actually met the day after I got out of ICU. So I had my neurosurgery, went into ICU for a night, and then they moved me to a regular room. And I spent one night in the regular room. It was that day that the radiation oncologist came in to visit me, and they gave me the information about gamma knife. And I told them, I said, I'm on all kind of drugs right now. I am not going to remember any of this. You're going to need to talk to my husband when he gets back here. And they said, okay, no problem. And my radiation oncologist wrote down his name and his cell phone number on the back of the pamphlet. And he goes, you're not going to see any pictures of me in there. He said, I haven't been here long enough. And I thought, oh man, they gave me the new guy. Oh, how am I mean, I have brain tumors, man. And I got the new guy. Is it because I'm from out of town? Is it? Come to find out, the new guy, when I got my cell phone and I was able to Google him, came from MD Anderson in Texas. USC stole him. He went to MIT and got his bachelor's degree in biology. And then he went to Harvard Medical School.
Wow.
His father was a radiation oncologist. So I was like, yes, I fell into the pretty pit with that one.
Wow.
But yeah, he took care of me. And then he actually scheduled me, or his people scheduled me with medical oncology to follow up.
Okay.
So
yeah. So you mentioned you didn't think you were going to live till you were 45. Tell me what was going on in your head about that. Cause this is where I dive in for myself too,
Yeah, I just, my parents, I lost my mom to colon cancer in 2006. And so she never knew about even the melanoma resection here. And then my dad passed away from mesothelioma in 2010. I went down in April of 2013. So knowing that both of my parents had passed in their 60s, my mom was 65, my dad was 68, from cancers, I was freaking out. I just said, okay, neither one of them had cancer in their brain. and they died. What are we going to do here? I mean, am I going to see my next birthday? Am I going to see my husband's birthday? Am I going to see Thanksgiving, Christmas, my son's next birthday? It just, it was hard not to lose a little hope and just think, okay, well, what do we do to fix this? It was my oncologist that actually said, hey, you know what, you're not a statistic, you're a human being, and we don't know what's going to happen to you. We're going to do what we can. There's this great drug coming out, it's called Keytruda, and it's doing wonderful things in trials. And I said, great, get me into a trial. And he goes, we can't get patients with brain tumors into the trials. And I just thought, oh man. So I said, okay, well, when is this Keytruda coming out? And they said, we're probably a year and a half away. And I said, okay, so you need to keep me alive for another year and a half until I can get on this Keytruda. What do we need to do this? Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was just from there, I kind of had the woe is me for probably about 3 months. Just, I mean, we ended up, there's a song by Tim McGraw. I was a country radio DJ, so maybe you know it. Live like you were dying.
Live like you were dying. For sure.
And I kind of had to decide that that's what we were going to do. My husband ended up taking time out of work. He said, I will work from home. And that was before working from home was a thing. And we would go hiking and I would take walks because I wasn't allowed to. We bought a new car that I wasn't allowed to drive, but it was a new car for me. And it was just kind of something to say, okay, we're trading in your old car. We're starting this new life. This is what we're going to do. We need you to stick around now because now you have a new car and you can't die when you have a new car, right?
You can't die, but you couldn't drive it still either, right?
I could not drive it. I was not allowed to drive it. So but I enjoyed riding around in it. And until I could get back on my bicycle, because I couldn't even get my helmet on, my husband would drive me around my cycling routes because that was kind of a way to keep a little sanity, because I could walk around the neighborhood and I could, anything that was somewhat close to home, do loops around the general neighborhood. I didn't want to walk too far away from home and have an issue. But until I could get on my bike again, I couldn't see all of the places that really brought me that sense of the de-stress.
Right.
So we did. We drove around, we took our time. And when my medical oncologist said, okay, we're going to start you on this drug. We're going to get you going on what we do have and see what works. And he said, we haven't tried it on people who have just come out of Gamma Knife. We don't know how this is going to affect the swelling in your brain. We don't know anything, but you seem like a good, and he hated to say guinea pigs. So I said, well, then just call me a research facilitator. That's what we're going to do. I am willing to take this. I'm fit. Let's go for it.
So you had surgery, they Gamma knifed. Were things starting to come back again?
Things came back in my brain. Let's see, I had my first Gamma knife in May. It was early May. By September, I had 2 new brain lesions and I had to have Gamma knife again. That was after I had taken Yervoy for the melanoma, which froze it in my lungs. My lung tumor stopped growing, but the brain tumors kept popping up still.
How big was the tumor in your lung? Was it big?
I had one that was 5 millimeters. It was the size of a golf ball. And then I had one next to it that was, it was 5 centimeters. And then I had one next to it that was 2 centimeters. And then I had one in the left lung lobe, the lower lobe, that was another 2 centimeters. So I took the drug that was available. It kind of stopped it in its tracks, other than, like I said, in the brain, because the blood-brain barrier likes to block things from going up there.
Yep.
And so I ended up with Gamma Knife again in September. And then I made it until January. and I had 2 or 3 more tumors. And I just thought, when is this going to stop? I mean, I can't just keep popping up brain tumors. I don't like Gamma Knife. It's not pleasant. I don't want to have to go through this anymore. But I will, because I'm not dying today. That became my mantra. I'm not dying today. I don't feel like I'm dying today. I still want to get a shower. I still want to go out for a bike ride. So let's not woe is me. Let's just, like you say, we do hard things.
We do hard things.
Let's just do this, do what needs to be done. I still have this Keytruda on the horizon that I'm looking at, and I need to get there.
So from surgery with the Gamma Knife, multiple Gamma Knives, what kind of residual stuff did you have at that time? Did you notice some stuff that was hard for you?
Not particularly, not until after I started the Keytruda. I ended up in 2014, I had Gamma Knife 7 times because I was getting brain MRIs every 4 weeks. And every 4 weeks, there were new tumors. So every, then it would take them a week to book Gamma Knife, and then it was a week of recovery, and then it was 4 weeks more. So about every 6 weeks, I was going in for Gamma Knife. And it got to be around June or July of 2014 that my radiation oncologist asked my oncologist, what else can you do? Because we can't keep frying her brain at this point. She's starting to have more brain radiation than anyone else we've done this to.
Wow.
So again, becoming a research facilitator in how many trips can you make through Gamma Knife brain radiation. Turned out my oncologist, my medical oncologist, went out to a conference somewhere, heard some hallway chit chat with some guys in Boston, a place called Foundation One. They do genetic testing. And they wanted to do testing on solid tumors. So sarcomas, melanomas, anything that's considered a solid tumor, not like leukemia, not blood.
Right.
And they wanted to have people with an unusual mutation. It's called a BRAF mutation, but I was not considered BRAF mutation melanoma because they only tested for a certain BRAF mutation for the drugs that were available. And I didn't have it. Mine was weird. So my medical oncologist ended up overhearing these guys talk. In the meantime, I had grown a lump on my skin, like under my skin. So it was like this marble was showing up on my back, and it was growing quickly. So he sent me to the dermatologist, who came in on his day off. Still my dermatologist to this day for that very reason. He came in on his day off, cut it out. My oncologist's lab guy came down, took it upstairs, tested it in his lab, sent a chunk off to Boston to Foundation One. They tested it in their labs, and they said, okay, well, we're going to try this one drug on you. We don't know if insurance is going to pay for it or not, because technically you're not FDA approved for taking it, but it's under this research paper that we're going to do. And I said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. So
I did. I ended up getting these pills, were ungodly expensive. Thankfully, our insurance did pay for it because we'd be broke. But I took that for about a month and a half. It shrunk the lung tumor down, which had grown to 9 centimeters by that point, was pretty much taking up the whole entire lower right lobe. It shrunk that down enough that a thoracic surgeon finally agreed that yes, he would indeed take it out. Because when you're popping up brain tumors like a popcorn machine, surgeons think, why should I cut out her lung if her brain is going to kill her in the next few months anyway? So it stopped the brain tumors from popping up for about 6 weeks, and the lung lesion had shrunk enough, and he said, yes, we'll do the surgery. So I went into the hospital, took out the lung lobe. As I was in the hospital for that, I had a persistent air leak. It would not seal up, so they couldn't remove the chest tube until it closed up, because your chest needs to be a vacuum in order for your lungs to expand. My radiation oncologist saw me every single day in the hospital. He came up to my room every single day, convincing me, you need to get an MRI now. You need to get an MRI. You need to get an MRI. We need to check your brain. It's been 8 weeks. We can't, the way you were popping up brain lesions, we can't do this.
Okay.
So my thoracic surgeon finally found a plastic drain they could put on the end of the chest tube in order to get me down to the basement for an MRI. When I had that MRI, I had 5 brain tumors.
Whoa.
Still had a chest tube, needed to go get Gamma Knife.
Oh my God.
So we booked that, and I went from my hospital room on the 9th floor down to the basement to get Gamma Knife. I think it was round 7 or 8 at that point in time. I had kind of lost track. It got to the point where when they came in and said, you need Gamma Knife, I just like, bring me the paper. I'm just, bring me the paper to sign. We know we're going to do this. Let's just do it. But I went down, and when you go for brain radiation, they do a high definition MRI, and they always, every time I went, there were always more tumors on the high definition one. They always found more, usually really small ones, but they did. They said, and so when I got rolled out of the high definition MRI and I had the frame on, if you've ever seen those things, they actually screw them to your head. They said, okay, you've got 9. And I said, I'm sorry, insurance says that you can't get brain radiation, not targeted brain radiation. You have to go to whole brain radiation if you have more than 4.
Oh my God.
And they said, well, we're going to ignore that. We're going to do Gamma Knife today anyway. And your insurance can argue with us later. So I did. They radiated 9 of them. I did not find out until several years later when records started going digital and I looked at my patient portal that 3 of them were on the brain stem. So had he not come in and convinced me to go down and get the MRI, your brain stem controls all your autonomic functions, your breathing, your heart rate, your everything. I mean, my heart could have stopped at some point, even with a tiny brain tumor in there. Again, even at that point, I didn't consider myself a brain tumor patient. I had brain tumors, but they weren't brain cancer. So I just, it's still just a weird feeling. It's like, yes, I'm a cancer patient. Don't say I have brain cancer. I don't. I have cancer in my brain that's different. Don't say I have lung cancer. I don't. I have cancer in my lung. It's different.
Right. It's not like you had a glioblastoma or
right.
You had tumors that went to your brain. I mean, cancer.
Yeah, they were cancerous tumors in my brain. So, I mean, it does make you a brain tumor patient, but there are probably several 100,000 people out there who are like me that think I'm not a brain tumor patient. And it's like, you are. There's actually more of us out there than there are brain cancer patients, which is a good thing because brain cancers tend to be a little more difficult to resolve. They don't have the chemo and the meds that other cancers do, but it just, whew.
So what were you like, what was going on for you? Like, this just seemed like it just was never ending. Like you were in the hospital.
That was a low point. I mean, to be laying in, it took 3.5 hours with the frame pinned to my head. And then they lay you down and they lock your head still so you don't move because they're frying the tumors and they don't want to fry a healthy portion of your brain. They just want to fry the tumors. So I was 3.5 hours locked in laying down with the chest tube that was starting to back up because it was gravity fed and it was not gravity feeding when I was laying down. And I just, man, when I got done with that, I just said, I hope I never have to do that again. Wow. And it was, let's see, in November. So that was August. And in November, I actually was able to start Keytruda. So I did make it. Yay. They started me on the Keytruda. it takes a little while to ramp up, because what it does is it goes into your immune system and it points out, hey, this is cancer, this is bad, go get this. And then it ramps up your immune system to actually attack it. So in the meantime, I got more brain tumors. Went through Gamma Knife again. That was round 8. So it was round 7 when I had the chest tube. It was round 8 after I started Keytruda. In December, checking another 4 weeks later, I still had more brain tumors. That was around 9. And that's when I started thinking, wow, now I'm on this Keytruda. This is supposed to be working. It's working on the lung lesions, but it's not working on the brain lesions. This is horrible.
Yeah.
You know, what are we going to do to stop this? They zapped me again, round 9. And when they checked again for the next a little over a year, I had no more brain tumors popping up. So I was on the Keytruda every 3 weeks. I was going down and getting infusions. They lasted 30 minutes, real quick, easy. I had very few side effects. It killed my thyroid, but didn't do much else. And it was just clear brain. And then I started having a problem with my left hand, these fingers specifically, these 3. And as a bike rider, those are your brakes. You're holding your handlebar, these are your brakes. And I started saying, you know, I can't really feel my brakes very well. It's not that they weren't numb. I could feel the fingers. I couldn't tell where they were in relation to my body. And I forgot what the term is for it, but it's your brain will actually tell you where your body is and where the parts of your body are in relationship to the entirety of the universe. Yeah. So when I was typing, I couldn't hit like the keys directly above the home keys with my left hand. So I started texting. I was like, well, I just use my thumbs and I'm okay using the left thumb, is still working pretty well. It's not as bad as the others. I'm okay. Then I had to start chicken pecking to text. Meantime, we were watching the edema on the right side of my brain just increase and increase and increase. And they said, we're going to need to do something about this. You have some scar tissue or something in there. It's not active tumor. It was one that we brain radiated. They knew that because my MRI reports were 3 pages long. They numbered brain tumors, and as they gamma knifed them, they would list how much they shrank. You know, tumor number 1 is in this area, it's down to this size now. Tumor number 2 in this area is down to this size now. Tumor number 3 looks like it's disappeared. Tumor number 4 is, and I just thought, wow, this is just crazy. I shouldn't have 3-page long MRIs. Now they're down to a page. They're like less than a full page. But at that time, they were just lengthy. Wow. But yeah, I said, okay, well, I don't want to take steroids because that'll counteract the immunotherapy I'm on, the Keytruda. So what can we do other than steroids? And they said, well, we can hope it just stops. Goes away. It didn't. It was Easter Sunday of 2015. We were going to go for a hike to the top of the nearest mountain and watch the sunrise with some friends. About 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm in washing my face, and I thought, my tongue feels really weird. So I stuck my tongue out and I was looking at it and I was like, nah, it's okay. And then I started feeling it twitch. So I stuck it out again, and like half of my tongue, if you draw a line, a center line down your tongue, half of it was seizing. It was just, it was the weirdest thing.
Were you freaking out? I would have been a little freaking out.
Life had become so, I had brain radiation so often, and I had 36 brain tumors up to that point, that it was almost like, and I knew there was a lot of swelling and edema going on over here. So because we had been watching the brain MRIs.
Yeah. So
I thought, there goes my hike. I got ready to walk to leave the bathroom because I was washing my face when I noticed it happening. And then the whole left side of my face started to seize. So I couldn't speak because half of my face was out of control. So I walked out, I smacked my husband on the shoulder and I point. And he goes, that's not good. And he goes, I'm going to have to call 911. And I said, yeah. This is not in my head. I was like, okay, here we go again. So he said, I'm going to lay you down on the couch. Let me go get, out of my hiking clothes and into some regular clothes before they get here. And they hauled me off to the ER again. By then I could speak. It had actually calmed down a little bit. And I told them, I was like, look, I have a bunch of edema over here. We don't need to do a brain MRI. I can tell you right now, my brain has shifted left of center. We already know this. I don't know how far, but the Falks line, as it's called, was no longer lined up here. It was now over here a little bit. And so I knew it. I mean, I didn't expect to have a seizure again, but I knew what was going on and I knew why. So they said, all right, we're gonna have to pump you full of steroids. I was like, oh man, I don't want to be on steroids, but I understand. So they did. They increased the steroids, increased the anti-seizure meds, got a hold of my radiation oncologist on Easter Sunday. I sent him an email from my cell phone and I said, look, I'm in the ER, had a partial seizure, lost control of my left hand and half of my face. We all know why this is. I said, I guess I'm gonna have to come down and see you again and figure out what to do about this. I said, if we're gonna be talking neurosurgery, please contact Charles Liu, who was the one that did the first surgery, like almost exactly 2 years prior.
Wow.
We were about a week away from it being exactly 2 years prior. And then I contacted my neurosurgeon's nurse because she's a cyclist. So we got to know her really well. And she was the one that kind of coordinated the surgeon seeing me again. But so Easter Sunday, I had the seizure issue. That Monday, the very next day, I was down at USC again, seeing my radiation oncologist. He said, you're going to have an appointment with Dr. Liu and I said, yeah, 1 o'clock. I already contacted Cindy. I know we're good. And they ended up going in and doing a second brain surgery over here to remove, it was a previously gamma knifed lesion that the immunotherapy started
Working
causing
on
an issue with.
Yeah.
It started causing some swelling. And the only way to get rid of that swelling was either go on steroids until all the swelling went away, which I was refusing to do, or get it removed.
That's a pretty big decision to make, right?
Oddly enough, though, I wasn't afraid to have brain surgery again because it went so well the first time that I was like, brain surgery, it's just no problem. This is totally normal. I mean,
mine went well too. So I'm right in your camp. I'm like, I went home the day after, aside from having like this clip in my head that I felt like I was exposed if I had a strenuous bowel movement, I thought my brain was gonna pop out of my head. But
yeah,
wow.
because it went so well, you just kind of go, oh, brain surgery will fix this. Let's do it. I mean, it's just okay. Let's go for it. I mean, meantime, I had been riding my bike with the group again. It was just, life had kind of gone back to normal. I had gone back to work. Everything was going well. My lung had finally healed. The chest tube had been taken out. Brain MRIs were coming back clean other than the building of the swelling. So no big deal. And I mean, after that, second surgery went equally well. I actually got to choose the resident that I wanted to assist because I'd become such a frequent flyer down there.
What's funny about that? Like, this is the first time it's ever come up in a conversation. Like, I remember having brain surgery and it was at a large medical center here in Connecticut. The surgeon was amazing, but of course they have residents, right?
Yeah.
And part of me, I'm a nurse, so I know this stuff, right?
You're like not the residents, no.
I worked in the ICU. I'm like, these guys are like, some of them aren't the greatest, and they're going to be like, I didn't really think about it, but the resident came to see me a couple times, and I'm like, oh man. Or
Yeah, it's
I'm like,
like, "Can we get a
hopefully he
real
just,
doctor in here."
yeah, hopefully he just did that. He closed it. Like he didn't do anything with that. Like I told myself that story, you know what I mean?
Well, I ended up at USC at least. They knock you out with propofol, which is a really lovely 10-minute nap, while they have a neurosurgeon, a resident, apply the gamma frame. The first woman did a fantastic job, no problem. I told her, you know what, I just had neurosurgery over here, so there's a bone flap. Be careful putting the pin in there. No trouble with it. Second guy comes in and I said, hey, she's short pinned over here because there's a bone flap there. It probably hasn't healed. It's only been about 3 months. He ended up screwing it a little too tight. I don't know if you can see it here. I have a dent along the side of my head right here now.
Oh man.
Because he pinned the bone flap just a little too tight and pushed it in. And I said, oh man, the neurosurgeon's going to be mad when he sees that his nice clean work was messed
Yeah, I probably want to punch him in the head.
Oh, I was like, but the guy, the look on his face, it was like a combination of kicked puppy and holy terror. I mean, like he thought he was getting kicked out. It was almost like, that's it. That's the end of my residency. I'm not going to be able to be a neurosurgeon. I'm done.
It'll be in his story forever. Like, I remember.
Oh yeah. And he's still, oddly enough, USC hired him as a neurosurgeon. And I love to just push his buttons now. I'm like, oh yeah, see that? I didn't have a dent in my head before you got a hold of me. But the resident I asked for had done, they did rotations through gamma. So one of the residents I had did 3 frame applications, and they were perfect. And I had screw ups. My head was fractured over here on this side because of a frame that got pinned too tightly. It just, there seemed like there were so many whoopsie doodles that when this guy came along, and I was like, well, what fresh hell is this guy going to present for me now? And he was perfect. So when I went in for the second neurosurgery, I said, hey, are you gonna have an assistant with you? And can I pick him? The guy ended up going on to specialize as a spinal surgeon. He's down in UC San Diego now. I still keep in touch with him because I told him, I was like, I don't know why you're not working in brains. You have the perfect hands to be a craftsman, but hopefully that's serving people's spinal issues very well, because some of them are really, really good and others they're learning.
Yeah.
And it's the upside and the downside to a learning hospital, because the attendings are so accustomed to talking to residents and to explaining things that when a patient has a question, they're really good at, I guess, dumbing it down or bringing it down to a patient level, because they're used to talking to residents. But then the bad side of it is, yeah, you're going to have people who are still, they're doctors. I mean, they do have their medical degree, but they're still learning. I mean, they're still learning their specialties and what they want to do. So
where you're getting this done now, what's next? What goes on now?
I was still taking the Keytruda, and
Yeah.
they said, well, you're gonna have to take a break from that for a little while. And I said, we'll see. Being generally athletic, I tend to be very aggressive. And I said, well, I don't feel comfortable being off the Keytruda for that long, because it's keeping me from cropping up new brain tumors. And it's actually had made my lung tumors, the ones that there was only one left, and it was the 2-centimeter one in the left lower lobe, because they took out the big one and the one next to it in the right lower lobe when they took the whole right lower lobe out, which we also believe was what was feeding the brain. Because if you have a massive tumor somewhere else in your body, some other kind of whatever cancer it is you have, it's going to shed little mutant cells, and they get into the bloodstream and they go right up to your head. So we ended up solving that issue. And I thought, okay, well, I still want to get my Keytruda. I want to remain on this, which I did. And then no problems. January 6th, 2016, my medical oncologist, who I still threaten to kidnap daily, decided he was going to MD Anderson to get a job and moved away to Houston. So I was like, oh, well, that sucks. My first appointment without him as my oncologist, I go into radiation oncology, I get a brain MRI, there's a new tumor. That was the first one I gave a name to. The rest of them were numbered. Tumor number 37 was Mike. I sent him an email. I said, it's because I'm stressed that you are now gone. You abandoned me. You left me, moved to Texas, and now I have a new tumor. And I'm thinking, wow, it had been so long since a new brain tumor had popped up that I freaked out. I thought, okay, that's it. It has come back. And now what do we do to stop it? I'm already on Keytruda. There's nothing else in the works now. I don't even know what we're going to do. That was probably the second low point. I mean, I actually left that appointment. I signed the paperwork saying, yes, I'll have Gamma Knife again. I mean, we're going to do what we're going to do. And we got in the car, and it's a 3.5 hour drive home. And I told my husband, I said, I am going to lose my beep for the next 3.5 hours. Just ignore me and continue driving because I don't know how to process this news. And I did. I think by the time I got home, I had finally fallen asleep. And I think that was probably the last sleep I got until after the next brain MRI showed up clear again. And then they just
Gamma Knife helped.
It did. I went down, and I had mentioned earlier that every time I went in for Gamma Knife, there were always more tumors on the high definition MRI. This time there were not. It was just Mike. So when I went in for the high def one and it was still just Mike up here, I thought, okay, maybe this will be okay after all, because it is just one this time. And then, yeah, I was tense. And again, getting MRIs every 4 weeks, probably for the next 6 months after that. I was nervous every time. You get this anxiety. It's like, okay, is another one going to show up? Is another one going to show up? Is another? Wow. And it didn't. So I continued my Keytruda. I ended up starting to have side effect issues from that. And I started getting pancreatitis. My thyroid started getting worse. My doctor said, let's take a break. I'm still on break because nothing has come back. So July of 2016 was the last of my Keytruda. I started getting nervous again about getting brain tumors because this medicine that had been so effective for so long, all of a sudden, it was part of life. Every 3 weeks, I was getting this cancer killing juice. And now we're stopping. What? But I didn't have, so I went 10 rounds through Gamma Knife, which is apparently the record at USC. I haven't had the most tumors fried, but I've had the most head frames applied.
Wow.
I mean, I started getting to know the guys at MRI. I know the techs. I knew who was head of MRI. I knew all the radiation oncology residents, the neurosurgical residents, the Gamma nurse and I are still tight. She came to my 50th birthday party because it happened to fall on the year that I was 5 years since diagnosis, when I should have been dead after 4 months of diagnosis. So, I mean, it was just, life becomes a bigger deal. I mean, you just, instead of thinking, oh man, another birthday, it's like, yes, I'm here another year. I'm 50. Yeah.
I know I'm 52, so I'm 50, not 52. I'm not
I'm
there.
53 now, but yeah, I mean, it was a big deal to even just cross 50. I was like, wow, okay. So now, yeah, each time, I mean, I don't appreciate getting my mother's elbows, the crow's feet that are coming in, but hey, it's another year that I am here upright breathing and still able to run and enjoy life. I mean, I'm functioning like I did prior to having 37 brain tumors. I mean, it's crazy.
That is nuts. Like, listen to your story. I was like, oh my God. And it's funny when you were talking about the tongue and the face, like, the brain, right? Because what brought me to the emergency room was there was this, I couldn't even explain it, like this weird, because it was my left hand, I'm left-handed. Like, it was like having trouble communicating with it. And it was hard to describe. It wasn't like, oh, you know how if you're having a heart problem, people said they get this left hand heaviness or left arm or whatever.
Yeah,
This was
burns or tingles or
yeah, this was different. I was like looking at it, I was like, there's something not right here. Funny story was, don't ask me how I have a cardiologist, but I have a cardiologist. And he was always, I'm not a huge med guy taking meds, but he was always like, one time I was a lot of stress and I get a lot of palpitations. So I went and saw a cardiologist. They did a stress test, all that stuff. And he's like, well, there's always this ambiguous. So I had a cardiologist. I actually saw him at Whole Foods not too long ago. So super guy. And I eat really clean. I'm very particular about stuff. And I'm like, listen, I try to manage stuff with diet. I'll take medicine if it's needed to. And obviously I needed to with the steroid thing, which is a whole nother story. And it's funny. I saw him post brain tumor, like it was like a year checkup. He comes up, and this is pandemic. He gives me a hug. He goes, holy crap, man. I read your chart. Like, oh my God. He goes, dude, don't like, we always focus on the heart, right? Like everybody in the medical community, they focus a lot on the heart. Like he goes, but sometimes we overlook the brain. And it was funny. I just saw him recently and he's like, man, how you doing? He goes, I'm eating healthy, but he gave me a big hug. I was like, he goes, Todd, he goes, that was a crazy ride. I read your chart, and I was like, yeah. So the thing too with the steroids, getting back to that was my worst experience in the whole process. Like I didn't get radiation. I'm followed by an oncologist who happened to come from MD Anderson, which I was like, he was smart as anything. And the weirdest thing, they are, there's something that comes out of MD Anderson, anybody, I'm like, all right, you're cool. But he was like, the term serious as cancer, he'd come sit down, he'd make jokes, great guy. He goes, I studied your tumor extensively. I hope you don't mind. I said, no.
Learn what you can.
He goes, all honesty, he goes, these are very rare tumors. And MD Anderson, we didn't really see a lot of these, but up here in Connecticut, I've been seeing more. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. It's a polycystic astrocytoma. And so I lost him, and he's doing research in Chicago now. So I was a little bummed. So, so like when you're talking about these doctors, I'm like, oh my God, like
I'm being abandoned. What?
Like they don't have a filler. It's nurse practitioner for now. I'm like, oh my God. But I'm lucky to be okay. But no, I totally understand like I had, when I was coming off surgery, when I got home, they wanted to do a short taper of the steroid. And I had issues typing, like all of a sudden I was home and I couldn't draw out words. I couldn't text right. I was like, oh my God, like I thought something was going on in there. And come to find out, I called the PA for my surgeon. He goes, man, that's a little strange. He goes, let's give it a day or two. And come to find out, it was like a steroid-induced psychosis. Like it just caused some challenges. I was like, oh my, thank God I partied when I was younger. I dealt with that. Like, I'll just get through this. You know what I mean? It was just a weird thing. But like that was the worst experience, was like, because they, I don't know what they did with you, but it was Decadron, right? Did they give you Decadron?
I
They
call
don't give
them
you
the
like,
devil's tic tacs. They're like those
because
things.
that goes through the blood-brain barrier. People are like, oh, prednisone for the lungs. They don't give you that for brain stuff.
Nope, it's dexamethasone.
Yeah, and you're like, oh my God, this stuff. I was eating. I was like, oh my God, it was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was horrible. And when I went in and had my first brain surgery, yeah, they put you on all kind of steroids, and I had trouble. I had like a diabetic response. I didn't know why. I had been having issues, prior to the brain surgery. I figured it was just the tumors. I go get my lung surgery, no problems. I'm thinking, okay, the tacos and the chocolate cake at USC are the bomb. If you're in the hospital, you get the tacos and a piece of chocolate cake. Just do it. So I go in for the second brain surgery. Tons of steroids because they want to make sure that there's no swelling after they've opened your head up.
Right.
Nobody ever told me that it was the steroids that were causing the diabetic response.
Yeah.
So there I am, finished my tacos, big old piece of chocolate cake, and I'm sweating. I'm breaking out. My heart's coming out of my chest. I'm pulsating sweat. I feel like I'm going to pass out. The nurse comes in and I said, what is the deal? What's going on with me? I mean, did something go wrong with the surgery? Is there an infection in there? What is the problem? And she said, oh no, that's just the steroids. And I thought, well, thanks for that. You're the first person to tell me that that's what the problem is. So I said, all right. So now they send me home with the dexamethasone. And of course, it's this huge amount that then has to taper very oddly. I mean, I had to write it down on a chart. You're going down to this dose on this day, this dose on this day, half a dose on that day. It was a mess.
And you've had brain surgery and you're like, I don't know about you, but I had like memory. I was just like, oh, I just was just kind of off.
I thought, I just had brain surgery and you expect me to just write that down because no,
so amazing. Just your story is amazing. So you mentioned 2 low points. What was that like for you and how did you get through it?
A really warped sense of humor.
Me too, for sure.
I actually have a sweatshirt that I bought that says "Not Dead Yet" that I was able to wear to my appointments, that I would just go down for my appointments in this sweatshirt that said "Not Dead Yet," because I've always kind of been, my diagnosis went public very quickly because, again, radio DJ on air, it happened live. There was no hiding that I had a seizure. And so we just let the listeners know, hey, this is what happened. And then I would talk about it anytime I went down to have a new MRI. And when I went back to work, I took 6 months before I went back to work. But then, I would just talk about it. But because I had to talk about it so often, and in a small town as a DJ on the #1 station in the area, it's an agricultural area up here, so country radio is tremendously popular. People would see me in the grocery store and ask how I'm doing it, and I just had to start getting this numbness. I mean, it's almost a loaded question. If you ask a cancer patient, hey, how you doing? Do you really want to know? Because I mean, I can just burst into tears right here in front of you and make you feel bad, but then I don't want to stand here and have to make you feel better. So I just kind of numbed myself to it. And I not so much denial as in the more taking on the mantra of, I'm not dying today. I'm not dying today. We're not done yet. How do we fix this? What do we do next? And then my son he was an adult at that point in time. I think he had already moved out of the house, moved up north. He was still living at home and going to college at the time this all happened. But yeah, he had moved away. So I would wait until my husband went to bed, and then, not wanting to freak him out that I was freaked out, I just I would lose it. I'd lose it in the shower. I would lose it at night when he was sleeping. And that was kind of all it took. It was almost like, okay, it's out now. It's done. Pull up your big girl pants and let's go for a bike ride or a run or whatever I could do to kind of make life feel normal again. I mean, I started noticing if I would go out for a run and some little kid walking to school would smile and go, "Hi, lady." It was like, whoop, there you go. Made my day. Just little things. Even weeds, dandelions coming up through a crack in the sidewalk. And I'm like, look at that pretty yellow flower. I used to rip those out by the roots. And now I'm like, look at that. Nature finds a way. It just, there it is. If that little flower can do it, so can I.
Changes perspective. I remember when I was first diagnosed in my first hospital stay, like the most impactful things there were like the transporter people just saying, "Hey, what's up? How's it going?" Like just the basic normal.
Yeah, treating you like a normal human being, not I even when I was pregnant, I didn't want to be treated differently or special, or I mean, I've always been one of those people, which is really odd for a morning show DJ. I wanted to blend. I never wanted it took them 1.5 years to talk me into being a morning show DJ. I was the promotions director at the radio station. I was not interested in that career. That was an accident that even happened. It was the warped sense of humor that said, you got to do this. You know, we need you. You're bent. We need you to come in. But I just, being treated like a normal person. But then again, like I said, there's that double-edged sword of, because even 3 months ago, I guess it was January, I had a brain MRI and it was an artifact. We weren't positive it was an artifact, but we thought it was an artifact because they do imaging this way and this way. Right. And it showed up in these slices, but not these slices. So they said, okay, it's either between these slices in this little no man's land, or it's nothing. It's an artifact that just showed up on the imaging. So for the next 3 months until 2 weeks ago, when I just had another brain MRI, that were like, yeah, it was definitely an artifact. It's not there anymore. Loaded question. How you doing? And I'm like, I'm good. Hey, everything's fine. It's lovely. It's wonderful. Because I didn't want to engage it. It was almost like, yeah, today's a good day. Tomorrow may not be so good. So if you ask me today, today's a good day. You ask me tomorrow,
you don't know.
You might get a different answer. I don't know.
So there was points, and you mentioned this in the conversation, like, hey, he may not be here next year, right? What was that like? Do you have like a connection, like, hey, like a spiritual connection? Did you, what did you do? What'd you do with that? Like your mortality?
That was, I hate to say it, but the very first seizure I had, the way I felt for the next 3 days and the utter and complete lack of give a care that I had. My biggest fear with my mortality is for the people I'm going to leave behind.
Okay.
Because I know from losing my parents in their 60s, how much it hurt to be the one left behind, how much it hurt to see them, to hold my mom's hand as she passed away. I mean, I didn't want to do that to my family. I didn't want to do that to my husband. I didn't want to do it to my son. I don't want to do it to my brother and sister. I didn't want to do that. But for me, I don't care. I mean, I hate to say, but my brain was so that I'm thinking, you know what? I'm really not going to care. I knew I was in the back of an ambulance. I knew that this must be tragic because I was never in the back of an ambulance before that point in time for any reason. I'd never been hospitalized other than having my son. But I was asking all kinds of questions. I was like, oh, what's that? That's not going to fall on me, is it? Oh, that's pretty cool. Why do you guys have that in here? And oh, no, how long have you been an EMT? Mind you, I don't know the guy's name. I couldn't pick him out in the lineup right now anymore, but I was full of questions that day. But I didn't care. And that has given me a sense of calm to be able to face. It's like my biggest bummers come when oh God, is this going to be it? Because I'm going to have to leave them behind. And what has helped that has been getting to know other patients and losing friends, because once you get into this cycle of meeting other cancer patients, other brain tumor patients, there's the upside in that you are inspired by them and you learn things from them and you gain hope from them, but we do lose some of them. And there's a downside in that it's like it takes a little piece of your soul every time you lose somebody, but then you also see their family go on and pick up the pieces and work their way through it. And I remember the first friend that I lost to melanoma, brain tumors got her, and there was no coming back from it. Her husband's now remarried. Her kids have gone from being a second and fifth grader to being in high school. You know, they've prom pictures get posted on Instagram and social media. And it's just that sense of, okay, the human spirit has the ability to pick up out of tragedy and move on and go on. I mean, you don't forget that person. And I don't worry that, you know, my son and husband would be like, oh, whew, she's gone. Good thing, good riddance.
Right.
But I know that it would pass and that they would move on and they could find happiness again in their life. So it's kind of a weird perspective that it's a freedom almost, that I don't have to fear that anymore. I don't have a fear of being gone anymore. Not that I, you know, knock on wood, I'm going to find some.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to be taken today.
I knock on wood a lot. So how has this changed you in life?
I think my give a damn's busted. Things don't seem as tragic anymore. I mean, I almost feel worse for, like you said, it was a pandemic when you learned. That has to be hard because I had a brain MRI during a pandemic and my doctor was in Gamma Knife with another patient at the time. So he wasn't coming over to the cancer hospital for my follow-up to give me the results of the brain MRI. And he goes, well, just have them come over to the hospital, have her come into Gamma. She knows where to find it. Well, we went into the hospital and because it was a pandemic, they said, well, who's the patient? And I said, well, I am. And so they told my husband, well, you can't come in. And I said, okay, I'm about to go downstairs and get the results of a brain MRI. So you're telling me that I'm going to have to hear those results by myself on my own. I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I mean, this was just 2 years ago. I've been clear since Mike. That was the last thing to show up in my head was early 2016. So it just, anybody that had to face a cancer diagnosis or a brain tumor diagnosis, even if it was benign, because that's a confined contents, even people with benign brain tumors have issues that are not good. But I just, your family can't be near you. You're going to go have this brain surgery now and your family is not welcome in the room. They're not going to get to see you until you're released. I mean,
I went through a lot of mine alone.
Yeah,
my surgery, they let my girlfriend in and stuff like after and stuff. This started to let up a little bit, but yeah,
I just feel like if I listen to the whole of my story, if I say, yes, I've had 37 brain tumors, I've had a lung lobe removed, I had a nasty rash reaction from this Mechanist pill I got in on a research paper, lost my thyroid, I'll be on Synthroid for the rest of my life. Never do number 2 again normally, because that was another side effect. It sounds really tragic when you put it all in one little space, but when you spread it out over the 3 years that it happened, I normalized it. I mean, when you go for a brain MRI now, I don't know how many you've had. I've lost count. It's over 50 somewhere. It's probably more than years of my age.
You've had more than me, but I've had a few for sure.
I just feel, I mean, I'm laying there in the MRI machine and I'm thinking, this is normal life for me. This is normal.
Yeah.
So there are people who are going through things now that I don't know. I have to remind myself that it's like, it's not that bad. I don't ever feel probably as bad as I should. I mean,
And that's awesome,
I
right?
just
Like,
think everybody has their issues. Everybody has to face different things and different issues. And I still find myself getting angry when the TP ran out and I couldn't go find TP at the store because during 2020 everybody was freaking out and buying it off the shelves. I'm like, forget that I have to go for a brain MRI. I need some TP. I mean,
yeah, yeah. So what was your biggest learn? Like, if you had to say, like, this whole experience, what has it taught you?
be nice. Yeah, just I was aggressive in my job, especially in promotions, to the point where I was reprimanded for rolling my eyes at somebody in a meeting because I was just like, ugh, I cannot believe she just said that. That's so stupid. Or just telling someone you should know this by now. You know, you've been working here for 6 months. How have you not learned your job yet? I mean, I was told, people were scared of me. They're afraid of you, Niki. I'm thinking, me? Really? People are afraid of me? What? Not anymore. I mean, I just, again, people have their issues and we don't know how they're going to deal with them. And they're, you know, everybody's got their something to overcome. And a lot of times people aren't telling you what it is. I mean, I do have the dent in my head that goes pretty much unnoticed. I walked around with a horrible rash for a while, but I never lost. I mean, my hair is, it's past my waist. It's thick. I never lost it. I never looked like a cancer patient. I never looked like a stage 4, you could die in the next couple of months. We've lost control of brain tumors, cancer patient. I just never looked like it. So when I see people now, I'm like, you don't see what's not on the surface. Be nice.
Be nice. Be nice. I love it. So if somebody, what advice would you give somebody that was going through a hard diagnosis, whether it's brain tumor or cancer or just something hard? You know, what kind of,
Find your people. I mean, I ended up, I mean, I've got my husband, he's a sounding board, but to the point where, you know, you don't, sometimes you don't want to bounce off your sounding board too often because you don't want to scare them. You don't want them to, every single time you talk to them, all they hear is your complaints.
yep.
So I took it out in my running and I found melanoma groups online. I found my people that understood. And, you know, now that thanks to ABTA, the American Brain Tumor Association, and I do actually associate and say, you know what, I am a brain tumor patient. It's weird for me to say that. And there was never really like an end to my cancer treatments. There was never really a ring the bell moment. There was never a, hey, no more chemo. I mean, it just, I went on break from taking Keytruda and I'm still on break. Brain tumors were just popping up all the time. So when did they stop popping up? We were never sure when they were going to stop popping up. Could they come back? Yes. But find your people. So now, you know, I found other brain tumor patients that I have stuff in common with, that I have similarities with. I mean, there are groups locally that I could go to, but because I wasn't treated here, I feel better having the anonymity, I guess, of finding friends on social media. And it's almost like there are these people that you can be friends with. They can turn loose on you. They can go into a private message and say, you know, I had a brain MRI. I didn't show up well. This is not going good. They can let loose on you, and yet you can still walk out the door and go on with your day because you can't really take on the world's problems. I mean, as much as we would all like to have sympathy and empathy, and I mean, yes, the Ukrainian people are having a lot more difficult time in their lives than I am right now. But I don't want to sound like a mean person because I just said be nice, but you can't overly internalize. And if you're going through something really, really difficult, you can't take it out on the world. It doesn't give you permission to take it out on everyone else, because you might be taking it out on somebody else who is having an equally hard time and you don't know it. But you also can't let people dump on you. You can't internalize everything. You have your own problems to work through, and just you deal with you. And find your people, find other people that are going to understand you're dealing with you and they're dealing with their problems, and you can help each other as much as possible. But you also have the respect for one another to say, you know what, I'm not going to unload on you right now because I know what you're going through is pretty horrible too.
I could completely relate. I think for me, it was like learning, like it was an eye opener for me that I had to change my life. Like I was living like I was in survival mode. That's why I named it this. Like I was living work to work and working to live and all that. And I didn't need to. I think that was the biggest thing. Like I didn't need to. It's not like, oh my God, I was living check to check. It wasn't even like that. And I'm like, as soon as I got diagnosed, I'm like, man, life's short. Like, enjoy. Like, you know,
why am I worrying about
why am I live on a lake? Like, I could go fishing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I asked my neurosurgeon, he goes, when can I run? He goes, oh, you can run. Yeah, in a little bit, you know, like start walking, start doing this, you know. He thought I was a moron because I used to do like Krav Maga. It's like Israeli fighting. He goes,
oh man,
that's not that smart, Todd. That's just not.
Well, I had to quit playing hockey because, you know.
So
that said, I will still ice skate, which kind of freaks out the radiation oncologist, because a couple of times I sent him a picture of me on my skates and he's like, I don't see a helmet.
Do you not wear now? I when this freezes my lake, because you know, if you see me on social media, I have a lake in my backyard. Is, you know, my first year, I'm like, I'm strapping the helmet on. Like,
I'm gonna be so careful.
If I fall and hit my head, it's like, all right. But I think that the point is for me was I don't know if you can relate to this, but you've just had I've had so many great people in my life, and because life gets busy, you don't reach out to them like you should.
Oh, that's very true. Yes.
And it's like the friends that you had, like you go yourself, and it's life, right? But
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be. I could make it be an active part of reaching out to people I haven't talked to in a while, because that was really what was the most important thing, was the relationships and having conversations with people. And
work isn't gonna be there. They're not going to care. You get, I mean,
doesn't
I
matter.
have some coworkers that are friends. I am still friends with some of the people I worked with at the radio station. In fact, I just had lunch with some of them recently. But it's the people in your life that you need to have contact with, because you just don't know when something's going to come back for you, when something's going to happen to them, and it's like, yeah, you don't want to wait for that tragedy anymore. And I almost wish it didn't take a tragic life lesson to have that kind of appreciation, but
Yep.
it kind of does. I mean, it was work, eat, sleep. It was complete obsessive. I was on air for 4 hours a day. And then I went to do promotions director duties. And it was just constant. Like this time of year, we started going into festivals and fairs, and just the promotions department was nuts. And I was a slave driving, overly aggressive. I want to do the best job I can do, raised with Catholic guilt. You have to do this. And then, yeah, it just got to the point where I was like, why am I doing this? I don't even have to be working. My husband launches rockets. I don't need to be working. What am I doing? But you get into a life pattern. And sometimes it's, boy, I mean, it's a smack. It was a literal kick in the head. Just it's like, okay, now guess what? You're gonna have to slow down, and you need to learn to slow down. And Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the
And
thing
that's
about,
awesome. Do the things you do, right? So you're still
yes,
running, you're still biking, you're doing the things that you love, right?
yep, get out there and do things you enjoy doing. Take the time, me first. I mean, whether it's a half an hour, 15 minutes to just sit down, set your phone aside, put it on silent and breathe and just go, it's me time. It is me time right now. I know we all have responsibilities. There's stuff that has to get done. Cars need oil changes, sheets need cleaned, everything needs to happen. Groceries need to get purchased. But man, just take a little bit of me time every single day and time to appreciate other people. I mean,
Yeah.
I have friends now that'll say, can you do lunch? And I'm like, oh, okay, let's try and coordinate schedules. And I'm thinking, I'm going to make it happen, but I don't want to do it during my me time. So let's go after my run, but before I need to be at this appointment. And how about this day at this time? And can you guys do this? And we'll meet up. And then the last time we said, hey, let's do this next month. That was so much fun. Let's just get together and do it again.
Awesome. I love it. Niki, thank you so much for sharing that amazing story. Lots of your learning. Before we go, any final word that you'd like to share with the audience, any final thought?
Oh, wow. Other than be nice and find your people and appreciate stupid little things, somebody's cute puppy, someone having a baby, anything, just the sun came up today. The sunset was pretty. Anything that you enjoy, just get out and do it. I mean, I still don't have a bucket list because you don't need one. You don't need a bucket list. Just go
Do it.
appreciate the day.
I love
Appreciate
it.
that the rain is falling and creating puddles. Go stomp in them. Be a kid again. I mean, I still ride my bike. I still skate. I still do all the stuff I did as a kid that I was too busy to do when I was working. So take a look at your life. Don't be too busy.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Niki.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have an awesome day. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.